I gotta get in a couple minutes before we get out of here.
Hold on. I
Um,
messaged you about something I wanted
oh
to
yeah,
address.
that's right.
I
I
don't want to
did
talk about
forget
the
about
fucking.
this.
I don't know what to talk
All
about
right,
the
it's got
Sabres.
nothing to do with the structure of this show, but I got Joe on, and
Yeah, yeah,
whether I bring it up or not, he's going to. So you may as well.
yeah.
Joe is a, I don't want to say a beef, but questions about the special teams coach leaving.
There's a
And
couple things. The Bills media. I give them shit a lot, and I think a lot of it's justifiable sometimes. And I know you love them, and maybe you think I'm out of line here, but I think it's kind of weird that a couple things. First, the Brian Daboll and like Sean McDermott like beef, if you want to call it that. I have not seen one Bills reporter, anyone try to get a sourced opinion about that and like see if they had like legit falling out. It has been like greeted with, oh yeah, they had some issues, but that's how NFL teams are. You know what I mean? And like that seems like a very much like a platitude of like, okay, yeah, you could say that about everyone. Like, oh yeah, like Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick didn't like each other and like the assistant realm or anything like that. And like I'm like, does anyone not want to like dig and like find out like call Daboll. Like I know I'm not them. I don't have their press pass, but like you like I feel like no one has cared about looking into this story, whether it's calling players or like contacting secondhand sources, things along those lines. Like there's been nothing of that nature. And then two, the special teams coach, he gets fired or quits or leaves. And allegedly, and Jeremy mentioned this on the morning show, that he had heard that like he resigned the next day. And there's people saying like in the media, like, this is not shocking at all. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's not shocking. Why didn't anyone bring this up like after that? Like, were they just waiting for the Bills to release it because they didn't want to piss off Derek Boyko or whoever? It's just kind of like those things. Like, I sometimes feel like 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 the Bills are much bigger in that town than anything else, and people don't want to rock the boat with the fear of getting alienated by the mafia, being alienated by the team, just things along those lines. And I'm sorry, like I'm not in their shoes. I don't go to the practices. Maybe if I did, I would be a pussy and be like, I'm not gonna ask this because then they're gonna like not let me do this or whatever. So I'm just some schmuck drinking scotch with you. But like the whole last couple weeks, we still don't have answers about the last 13 seconds. Nothing. You're telling me that no one can call the third string defensive lineman or tweet to someone? Like, come on, like DMs, Instagrams, talk to this person. Like, we've not gotten anything. And I don't want to hear like, oh well, the only national people, they're the only ones that break shit. Give me a break, okay? Like, do your work, like do your job, okay? Or like do some stuff. You don't gotta pick your golf outfit yet for your Bills golfing outing in April. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm being a dick, so feel free to send your hate tweets to me or DM me and say you're out of line. But like
well,
this sort of stuff, I'm just like it flabbergasts me a little bit because it's like we still don't have answers about that last 13 seconds. We don't know if there was legit beef between McDermott and Daboll, and the special teams coach allegedly this wasn't surprising to anyone, even though no one mentioned this until after he left. So it's like, what are you guys? Are you just holding out hope? Like we're just waiting for the Bills to do shit, but we'll tweet we'll tweet nonsense like, oh, thank you, Brandon B, for having a 7-year press conference about talking about the 7th string cornerback in day 2 of it.
let me
Sorry.
unpack some of
Go
what you
ahead,
said.
unpack it there, buddy.
And I'm not defending, because
You're
you do have
defending
some.
him.
I
Defending him.
no, I'm going to be
Okay.
objective, unlike you. I do have some validity to some of the things you're saying. There's no question about it. I agree with you. I would love to know more about any potential rift between Daboll and Sean McDermott. It did seem fishy to me too that the special teams coach, the way that played out. So there's validity to a lot of stuff you're saying, or those last 13 seconds. But to your point, I will say this, and this much I do know: these reporters I just had last week on the show, when I had Matt Marino and John Scott on, they talked about it on the show, which you clearly didn't listen to. But anyway, I know
Listen,
you did
unless
not
I'm
listen.
on it, no, I don't listen to
I
you.
know you only listen when you're on, and sometimes you don't
Yeah.
even do that. But in all seriousness, we had a really good conversation about sports media stuff, and one of the topics was their inability and frustration. It's better than it was last year, but they still can't get access to specific players. It's still mostly Zoom. Now, after games, directly after games, it can be a different story. But for the most part, they still struggle getting access. They do have to go through the team. A player cannot DM and just start talking, or at least they're not supposed to,
But they could if they could,
without going through team channels. Yes, they could. Okay, but
and I'm
it's
pretty sure it
difficult.
happens.
The access for these guys is just, and these women, is harder to get than it was pre-COVID. Matt
Okay.
talked about it just on the show. He actually bitched about it with Tyler Bass. He bitched that Sean McDermott did not. Why are they hiding him? Why was he not made available after the game? They're trying to make it to what, training camp or whatever. But he wanted to talk to Tyler Bass, and Tyler Bass should have stood there and taken questions. What did you not get did they not communicate to you? Did you screw up with the kickoff? What were you supposed to do? Matt was expressing his frustration that he
Good.
hasn't had an opportunity to
Good.
talk to Tyler Bass.
All right, I
So
will. I
the
will.
only
I
thing,
will walk back some of my comments, and
some of
I
it,
get
some
the
of
Zoom
it, but
thing,
I think you're
sure.
also right to an extent. Some of it, anyway, without question, is because of the much more limited access. And even when they have these Zoom calls, Joe, the way it's structured is they get to ask a question. And if they're lucky, a follow up. They don't get to. It's just different. They talked about on the show. They were talking about the way they were able to build relationships in the locker rooms and stuff like that. And for now, at least, that shit's gone. So that's part of it. In terms of rocking the boat stuff, I think you have some. I think there's some fairness to that. I think maybe some of these reporters, maybe they don't want to get on the Bills' bad side. Not saying that they're going to take their credential away, but look, in these unprecedented times where it's hard enough to get access to certain players as it is, if you do piss off a Derek Boyko or somebody in that front office, they can make it harder for you to get who you want when you want to get them. So maybe, and I'm completely being hypothetical. I have no idea, but maybe when it came to like the special teams coach, or maybe when it came to Daboll, they're like, let's just leave it alone. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's. I'm just saying that could be a reason.
Here's my thing about that. If you're not, why does it matter? Like, who cares if you piss them off? What does that mean to you? Are you not going to be able to get your Zoom question in? Are they going to cut you off at the Zoom?
They can make it harder for you. They can make it harder for you to
but the
get
stories,
certain players.
Pat, the stories though that comes out of these players'
All right.
mouths, it's hardly any news breaking items. They're platitudes. It's
I
just kind of like
think it's their access. I think their access is it's harder to get access.
But what is the reward for that? For being, let's just say you are a company shill and you think everything the Bills do is the greatest thing of all time.
Here's another thing, Joe.
What are you getting out of this? And there are media
maybe
guys
the story,
who have
maybe
that.
the story about Daboll and Sean having this big riff, maybe it's not true. Maybe the statement was wrong. Maybe he lied, or maybe he just was misinformed.
I think my whole thing is like no one has checked in. There's not been anyone.
National people haven't either. So if it was a story,
maybe they didn't care that much about it. Like it is kind of a bleep on like Schefter's like radar. Like it feels like it's going to be one of those things that will come up down the road,
probably
in order to hurt someone. Like if there's an agenda being thrown there, I don't know. Like I said, there was just some things. I get the Zoom thing. Although I will say this, before Zoom, were people breaking like a lot of stuff and like infighting or anything like that? I don't think they did. I mean, I don't know. I understand it's tougher maybe, and there's.
I think it's around the league it's that way now, though, Joe. I think 32 teams around the NFL. It's national people who are breaking news 9 out of 10 times. If you hear a story about big news coming out of Baltimore, it's going to be Schefter too. It's not going to be a Baltimore reporter.
Well, Aaron,
9 out of 10 times.
Sometimes there were. I mean, look, we've talked about this. The Cleveland writer, Mary, I forgot her name. Mary Kay. She breaks stuff. The guy in Houston, McCain, he's been there for 5,000 years. He breaks stuff. There's a guy. There's usually
a few.
There's a few. I can't remember the last time anyone in Buffalo did any of that. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just some schmuck who's drinking scotch on this podcast, and I don't know what goes through all that, but I just, like I said, I just feel in some cases like when people are blowing smoke up Brandon Bean's ass because he talked for an hour, like I'm just like, dude, people are tweeting like, thank you so much, like come on, dudes, like that just looks like you're just pandering to them.
You have
No,
listen,
you don't. You can look, shake his hand afterwards and go, "Hey, buddy, thanks for doing that." So you don't gotta go on Twitter and announce it to everyone because I'm gonna sit there and go, "Well, you're a freaking kiss ass." Like the fuck is that? I can talk for. We're on a
let me say one
podcast for
thing.
an hour and 5 minutes. No one's coming to me to thank me for talking.
I'll say this much for you, Joe.
No.
I'll say this much. No, I think people who have voices, whether it's just a podcast like this, whether it's TV, radio, whatever, need to have alternative voices. Everything doesn't need to be unified. So I got no problem, whether it's, and sometimes I agree with you, and sometimes I don't. I got no problem with you questioning why we're not getting more details about stories because they are stories. They do deserve more details. I'm just saying I think, without knowing for sure, I mean, I have an idea, but I think the biggest reason why we're not getting more is because of a lack of access. But I'm sure there's more to it, and I'm sure you have some validity to your
Are you
points.
telling me? I mean, look, one day if I'm not, I'm gonna try. Like the special team coach is gone. Like, what does he have to hide?